It's a pleasure for me to have this edition of Bcapital Day with two very good friends, Stephanie and Alon. Let me briefly introduce you to them, and then you will all have the opportunity to ask a lot of questions. So it's a pleasure to introduce you to Stephanie Marko. She's the founder and CEO of Stikets, a leading personalization and labeling brand for families and schools. Under her leadership, Stikets has grown into a multi-million euro company, serving customers in over 20 countries with a team of plus 50 employees, known for its innovation in product customization and operational efficiency. Stikets has become a benchmark in the direct-to-consumer e-commerce space. One of the milestones, recent milestones, a couple of years ago maybe, Stikets acquired Camalung, which is a personalized merchandise company. Thank you and welcome, Stephanie. It's also my pleasure to introduce you to Alon Shamai. He's the founder and CEO of Floraqueen, a global flower and gift delivery platform headquartered in Barcelona. Since its launch, Floraqueen has expanded to reach to over 20 countries, operating with a hybrid logistic model and a network of local florists and suppliers. With a team of more than 100 professionals and annual revenues exceeding the 30 million euros, Floraqueen has become a leader in cross-border e-commerce and special occasional gifting. Additionally, Floraqueen has launched a spin-off called Big Green, okay? Also around plants. Alon can explain that later. Welcome, Alon. It's a pleasure to have you here today. And who breaks the ice?
I will break the ice.
That's good.
We arrived here at 4 p.m. and we both had 2 beers already. And there is 40 years experience here and a lot of white hair. We did all the mistakes you can imagine, all of them, a long, long list of mistakes. And we're willing to speak about almost everything. So that's breaking the ice for you, and whatever question we'll be happy to answer.
Good.
White flowers.
White flowers? The real story or the
official story?
The official story.
Both will be nice.
The real story is that there is a very big flower company called 1-800-Flowers with almost 2 billion euros in sales, well, dollars in sales. And I was thinking this is a market that is very fragmented in Europe, and I wanted to go into the market. But through the years, I realized that flowers actually make people happy. There is an experiment that was done in elevators that strangers gave like flowers to someone, and there's always a smile. And our tagline is "We make people smile," and I think it's a great product. It's a very complicated product, but receiving flowers, it's always great.
It says the day after Century. How many people got flowers yesterday? St. Jordi in Barcelona, only 3 people got flowers yesterday? Oh, okay. Well, I gave my husband a flower.
How many flowers did you sell yesterday?
He's going to say not enough, never enough.
Yeah. San Jordi is all those students in the street corners. They make most of the money, so we give them their space. Mother's Day is coming in 2 weeks to everyone.
Which is the biggest holiday for flowers?
San Valentine.
Even here in Europe. I know it's huge in the States, but...
No, even here in Europe. It's
But in
Valentine
Spain,
and Mother's
too?
Day. In Spain as well.
Question?
In the beginning, I imagine you were working with very limited resources. You have different customer acquisition options, channels, as an e-commerce. Which ones in your respective sectors did you choose, and why did you? What was your reasoning behind using those specific customer acquisition channels?
We started in 2010, and at that particular time, I just started a company because I needed to solve a problem and figured other mothers had the same problem. And we started with word of mouth. About 6 months into the deal, my husband says, who's an engineer, he goes, you know there's this thing called Google Ads? And he said, why don't we try it? And I was like, whatever you say. But our product wasn't even searched for. There wasn't search for our product at the beginning. So the first growth came from word of mouth. And then he started investing in Google Ads. And that particular time period in history, Google Ads worked, didn't they? And they weren't expensive. It was about 5 years into the deal. Oh, yeah, about 5 years into the deal. Our return on ad spent started dropping. And we talked to our Google representative at the time. And the response, I think it was around, was it panda or penguin? What was the first one?
Lots of animals.
Yeah, lots of animals. It was around one of the first animals that came out. And Google's response was, you know what? They were working too well for you. And history is gone.
Should I answer as well?
Yes.
Pretty much the same story, but I think the question is, if I may, is which will be the acquisition channels in the next 5 years? My working assumption is that advertising is going to keep climbing and climbing and climbing. This is not going to change. So we're choosing to focus on retention. Every customer that you have is a magnet to bring other customers. There is loyalty plan, there is a friend bringing a friend, there is just ensuring that this customer will come back. I think that there will always be acquisition, social media and influencers in Google. There's always mix and attributions and data. It's just going to get more and more expensive. So I believe that companies that will not excel in retention will just be growth companies that eventually collapse.
The other question, as you said, is what is the future of digital marketing? I don't think anybody in this room can tell you what it's going to look like tomorrow. It's going through so many changes over these 10, 15, 20 years. And now with artificial intelligence in the mix, what is that going to look like? Are we going to buy space, or is it just going to get to the point where you have to call up and say, okay, Google, I want this many sales. How much do I have to pay you? OpenAI, I want this much sales. How much do I have to pay you? It could possibly get to that point. And right now, since we don't know where that's going or how that's working, we're kind of flying blind. But like you said, it's a little bit of what you're trying to sell. We have a friend, Lucas. 90% of his is interruption ads. He doesn't do anything on Google because his product just isn't something that works with Google. So he has to do everything on social media. We do majority of Google, but we do some social media, and you do majority of Google, right?
Yes, but I think what we realize over the years that the investing in brand is actually an acquisition channel. It's very hard to quantify, but if we're looking even at our Google, brand is almost half of the Google ads that make profits.
You have to pay for yourself.
So investing early on brand and retention, I think that will go a long way.
Got a two-part question related to people. If you could go back in time, what was your best hire in terms of role? Don't mention names. In terms of role or function, what has your best hire been? And if you could go back in time, which role or function would you have hired sooner?
My best hire was my husband.
He had no choice.
But he did. He said, you know what? This company might actually work. And I was like, why do you think I would start something that would work? And he said, I think I'll join you in it. And we switched because he's an engineer and I was marketing. And then when he joined, I went into operations and he went into marketing. So he was my best hire. And now, I mean, he's my partner. or husband, depend on the day. And what was the second question?
If you could hire another function sooner in the cycle, what role would you have brought in sooner?
Oof,
You'll think.
Yeah. it's a hard one.
I hired a lot of good people. I think the best ones are the ones that have their own opinions. The ones that have their own opinions and are willing to stand up for their opinions. Because the CEOs, we have a very strong opinion about everything. And what I enjoyed the most in looking back is people that you can have smart arguments, sometimes loud arguments, sometimes very charged arguments, but those were the best hires. In hindsight, people that stood strong.
The second question, I'm thinking there isn't anybody or any role that I wish I had hired sooner, but there are some roles that I wish I'd hired later.
I would make earlier list of everything that I can do, but I don't have fun doing those, and hire people to do those tasks earlier. Because maybe what I can do and I do not enjoy, it's what they love to do, and I would act on that sooner.
Eric mentioned before that at Stikets you made an acquisition of a company a few years ago. And my question is, at what point of the development of a company, whatever your company's in position is, do you think it makes sense to switch from organic growth to inorganic growth? And at what point does it become a must if you want to grow?
Cameloon was kind of an interesting acquisition. I don't know if anybody is familiar with the company Cameloon. I think they had friends down the street, right? So it was a company that was growing. They started about the same time as us, and they were growing, and they were well known, in many cases better known than we were. But they had very similar products, but at different targets. So our target is personalized products for families, and there was personalized products for companies. So B2C, B2C, B2B. But the base products were very similar: stickers, magnets. They had chapas and a few other products. So when they started going under and their digital assets came up, it seemed like a perfect fit for us for two reasons. First of all, we were already producing the same products, and we didn't have that segment in the market. And second, now I have time. Sometimes I don't know how to say this in English, oddly enough, because I'm so used to their
Say it in Catalan.
sales are steady across the year, whereas in Stikets, we have a high season. The majority of our sales come in 3 weeks. So it was made logic on the sense of we could produce the products, it's the same thing, and it's a different market, and on top of it, then we could raise up our sales during our slow season. So it happens just to be a match of various factors. We were not looking to acquire anything. We get requests from various companies throughout the year asking if we want to acquire. It's never been something that I wanted to do. This just sort of kind of fell in our lap, and it was like, we'd be stupid not to do it.
Let me jump into this question too. I had a software company, not an e-commerce. And I acquired a company after a year that I started out my company. It was based on circumstances, in my case, but it could be based on circumstances, in your strategy, in the pocket you have, and so on. In my case, I realized after the year of growing my company, I already had employees, a lot of customers, but I realized that I could not continue be doing all on myself. Of course, I had employees, more of them, or all of them were software developers. They were focused on that, but a software company is beyond software development. So I realized that I needed a partner. And after looking at 2 or 3 potential partners to join, no one convinced me. Then I met a guy that I saw, I would love this guy to be my partner. But he had a company. And then I offered him to acquire his company in order to have him as a partner. As a consequence of that, I reinforced my software development team because the team of that company joined us. And secondary effect of that was a very important marketing operation because we publicly announced that acquired that company, so our brand immediately got reinforced for that operation. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions. The first one, if you were to go all the way back to your MVP phase, right, and you had to choose one channel to acquire your first customer, how would you acquire your first customer?
Our very first customer came 5 minutes after our web went live. I was like, how on earth did that happen? Talking to the developers who made the web, one of the programmers was a woman, and she'd been telling one of her friends about this web she was doing, and her friend asked her, as soon as that web's available, I want some of those stickers, tell me. So that was our first sale, was because somebody knew about the company. And like I said, our first sales came from word of mouth. If I were to go back, we couldn't do it any other way. My company is based on mothers, and mothers, talking to mothers is one of the biggest things. Like I said, digital marketing didn't even enter my brain at that particular time. So I couldn't go back and tell you what I would do because I'd do the same thing. If we were starting today, oh my God, I don't know how to start today. I don't even know where to begin today. If we were starting from zero today, what would you start from zero today?
I guess, what are you selling, or what is the site?
Well, I do biotechnology, so it doesn't go out
Okay.
in e-commerce, but anyway.
I would look where the demand is. What is the pattern, or what is the funnel of the demand? Where people have the need, how do they search? There's always a funnel on our needs. How do we make decisions? And I would try to put my solution somewhere along that funnel, to be at the right moment at the right time when someone needs something. Google tries to do that always, but you have upper funnel, you have middle funnel, you have where someone really needs it urgently. So I would go back and do more analysis on that. We didn't do that. We pretty much had a page, and I think also first week we had 10 orders per day, 12 orders per day. But going backward, I would do more of this analysis of how people search for my products or my service.
Yeah, my second question as well. Where did you get the money to start? So you all get to have the MVP, right? How did you finance your MVP? Did you bootstrap, or what did you do?
Well, I have 3 kids, and at the particular time, the Catalan government gave you money for each child. And when every child was born, I put that money in the bank and left it there. And then when decided I was going to start this company, I pulled out that money, cashed what little bonds I had, and used that. And then we put a second mortgage on the house, so it was all self-financed.
Did you grow organically?
Then we chose to grow organically. We had several time periods where it's like, do we go for funding? Do we want to get some investors in here? Do we want to? So we grew organically. And we brought in our first investor 2 years ago. So until then, it was all pure organic.
How about you, Alon?
Pretty much the same. I think I didn't have kids at the time.
So you didn't get money from the Catalan
I
government.
know your kids, we ended up pretty well. I think it was 50K, maybe. But I'm trying to answer also on a macro level. Sometimes too much money too fast can lead to a disaster. I don't know if you remember, Eric, but we were here at the accelerator years ago, and there was a guy running a reach out, a lead company, and he didn't want to take any money. He was profitable, he was growing organically, and he said, I don't want to take money because then I'll start making mistakes. I think that any areas, at least in e-commerce, okay, where you don't need to have huge investment today to see a return, if you're not willing to risk some of your own money, then why you expect someone else to risk his money for you?
Not only e-commerce, any company. So the history is full of examples of companies that has grown risking their own money without taking investors' money.
We never
it has
had,
been my case too.
any investors. We grew organically, and we're still here and we're profitable. So
Right. And well, if you grow organically, right, if you don't take money from outside, there's always like a, how you can say it, there's like a danger. Like someone can come and copy what you are doing, and because you don't have this money backing you, you don't have this massive customer acquisition, right? Since you are growing organically, someone, a copycat can come in and, you don't have the budget to do a massive customer acquisition. So they can acquire your clients, but your potential customers as well. So I guess my question here is, do you prefer to grow organically, even there's a bigger chance that a copycat can come in and do something similar to you, or do you think it's better,
Since this happened to Alon, I'll let him answer this question.
what do you refer to?
I don't know.
Money doesn't protect you from copycats, and I think you're talking about Colvin. Colvin raised 100 million euros. 100 million, copying what that was already existing. And if you read the news 2-3 days ago, you know what their situation is right now. Okay, the company was sold for €500,000. So I prefer not to talk about that, but I don't think money protects you from copying. And especially today with AI, with tools like Lovable or Bolt, you can copy anything. So I don't think that just raising money, thinking you will create a high wall to protect you, investing huge amount in acquisitions that is not profitable, will somehow protect you.
I think there's a misconception of first to market, first to scale. The idea the first to scale, but how are you scaling? Because if you're scaling by burning $100 million, at some point your runway ends and you crash and burn. The question is, when you crash and burn, if you take down other companies with you, or if you crash and burn and just burn yourself. So I think it's not so much how much money you've got, but how are you growing? Are you growing so that it's a stable company? Are you growing that's something that will 10 years from now work?
But to be fair, I think money is good. If you're raising money and you go into profitable growth,
Which is what
it's not that I'm against raising money. I think that some people have money and some people have ideas and they need to meet. It's just that you have to be very careful with from whom you're taking the money and where you're investing the money. Burning money in pure acquisition, not so sure. Investing money in developing your data, your IP, building an amazing team, that seems a bit more correct use of the money.
You said something key before from that founder who said, I don't want to take monies because I don't want to make mistakes with the money. So that's the key. The key is the way you manage your company. It doesn't matter if you get money or not. You must be a great manager with executing a great strategy. That's the key.
There is this story about all those people who win huge lottery prizes,
Yeah.
and 5 years later they're broke again. So it's pretty much the same story.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about financial KPIs, especially when growing or being bootstrapped like you guys did. And what are some of the main KPIs you were taking care of? Let's say net profit margins, like for growing profitably, especially scaling e-commerce, you need to have a lot of money to buy the inventory, I guess, and net profit margins or some other KPIs that were super key for scaling.
You go.
Is there still money in the bank? In our particular position, when you know that 80% of your sales come in 3 weeks, it's very difficult to, we were just talking about this before. How do you deal with the fact that 6 months out of the year you lose money, 3 months out of the year you break even, and 3 months out of the year you make money? So here, our KPIs are based on orders for the year. So in order to make this, we have to have X amount of orders coming in from this brand and X amount of orders coming from that brand. And we watch those orders daily. That's when every company has to be able to break down their KPIs into something that you can understand and everybody can see it and you can put it up on the wall, and so you know where you are at every given time. And then we have the percentage of what's, not more than 20% spent on logistics, not more than, we'll try to keep 23% spent on marketing, less than 18% spent on people, 19% spent on, so then you've got your point system, and every 2 weeks, every month looking, are we still within this, given the fact that we've got this peak season and we know we have to buy things now, but we're not going to be able to make money off it until then. It's a mixture of a science and an art. There's no, and that works for us, and it's going to be different for you, right?
Well, I was thinking, on financial KPIs, I would say know the difference between profit and cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very different stories. You can be profitable and burn and die because you don't manage your cash flow. And we made a lot of mistakes with this. So that's a major KPI, the P&L and the free cash flow. That's one. The second, I would say in general, is to avoid averages. We have so many markets, we have so many products. So on average, our basket is 70 euros. But in Poland, it's 40, and in the US, it's 90. So if you have €1, where should you invest it? So I would say on KPIs, financials or marketing, avoid averages. Don't speak on averages because it leads to bad decisions. And I think you also mentioned inventory, right?
Mm-hmm.
No inventory. No inventory. One of the biggest mistake we did was investing in inventory. Do 1 week inventory. Convince your providers to put their inventory at your place, because everyone wants to pass inventory from one to the other. Early on, avoid inventories, and have KPIs around inventory.
Did you have some, aside from the cash flow, which of course would have money in the bank to be able to
Yes,
provide,
money bank.
but did you have some profit targets? Like, for example, if you have a profit of 20%, that you would decide, oh, let's scale more and invest more in marketing, let's go, let's try a new channel or something? Or did you have some, that at least you want to see this to be healthy, did you have some benchmarks for your own growth that you set yourself?
We had so many different things, and we've done so many different things over the years. The biggest thing that Because again, when you're, it's like a gamble. When everything comes in 3 weeks, it's really hard to know what you're doing, flying blind most of the time. But when you know it's like he said, you need to know your numbers. You need to understand your business inside and out. So I know in order to get one order out, I need X amount of people. I need X amount of money in this one order. I need to be able to produce this in X amount of time. And based on those, then you create a whole system to watch that. I'm losing my English again, to watch that. I remember Rory from EO he told me about his Kapai TV. I don't know if he ever told you that story. So when this guy from EO, he was telling us, he created this TV, and so that it had the orders coming in, and then he had like bong that went off when they met their goals and stuff, and all sorts of explosions. And I was like, I want one of those. So early on, we developed a Kapai TV in our systems, and we have them all over the place. So we're constantly monitoring those numbers, the orders, the time, the people. And then we distill all that into information so that we know now, today, what we think is going to happen in June. Because we didn't have enough historic data to say, okay, so if this is where we are today, June will look like this. And it's not looking very pretty right now, I can tell you that. Economy's down almost everywhere in Europe. So I'm not answering your question concretely because I don't know how to give you an answer if that makes any sense.
I can try and add that there's always target. There's the yearly target, there's the quarterly target, there is the weekly, the daily, but I can tell you, yeah, some companies have the hourly. I think that what we have established through time is understanding the why. It's even more important than the target. If you are minus 20%, why? And even if you're plus 20%, why we're doing so well this week? Where is it coming from? What action did we take? And internally we have a weekly trade meeting. So the retention head, the acquisition head, the social media head, and they all have their numbers. And in the trade meeting, every week it's like a full P&L from top to bottom. And everyone needs to come. To me, it's even more important to understand why we are showing the numbers than meeting the targets.
And my husband always says, I'll say, you know what? We're selling this in Hungary. And then he's like, unless you can tell me why, I don't want to hear about it.
When we don't meet our targets, I usually have a meeting with her husband. That's how it works. I have to say, Eric, so far, you said there will be no questions, and I think, bravo.
Bravo. But there is more. Yeah, one more.
I want to know, so I think most entrepreneurs, before funding something, they question whether to work for another company who has experience or to go with their own venture. Did you have this question, and did you work for other companies, and did you get good experience that could help you in this venture?
So I'm not from here. I don't know if that was obvious or not. I moved to this country because I married a Catalan. And when I moved here, so I first was teaching English because that's what I could do. And I taught English to businesses because I had a marketing background. And then I got pregnant and had children. And then I stopped working because my husband was around. He had a company with his family. And so then I was a full-time mom. So I went from an English teacher to a full-time mom. And as I was a full-time mom, waiting for my kids to go back to school so I could regain some of my life, I had a problem with labeling my child's shoes. And for about 2 years wondered, how can I fix this problem? Because I'm obsessed, solving problems. We were talking about earlier, I'm obsessed with solving problems. And for 2 years I had this, how can I fix this problem? How can I fix this problem? And then one day I was like, okay, I could maybe make a sticker to put in the shoe. And then I thought, well, if I fix this problem for me, then other mothers want to fix this problem, and then I would have to start a business. I had never ever in my life until that point thought about starting a business. It never even crossed my mind. I was not going to be, being an entrepreneur was not on my radar, unlike other people who were born to be entrepreneurs. So it was a question of, do I do this or do I not do this? It wasn't ever, I want to be an entrepreneur. It was, I've got this problem, I can solve it. The solution means creating a business. Do I want to do that or do I don't want to do that?
The question was, is it worth working in another company before you start your own company? I worked in other companies. I think you can learn a lot by working with other smart peoples. It's about the specific, okay? If you think about opening a company A and your job is B, you can spend 10 years, but you will not learn anything about B. And I think it's also about the deadlines, okay? Some of my good friends at my age, they said, well, I'm going to work for other companies, and they're still there. Because you gain power, you gain money, and it's very hard to leave. So it's about the specifics. And I think that the younger you are, the easier it is to just start and make mistakes. And
my husband says he's an entrepreneur because he's unemployable. He says, I couldn't. He is unemployable. I'm the only person who hired him. So it's, it's just, every person has their...
I'm definitely in favor of working at other companies before you start your own company.
There is a difference being an EO. There is a big difference, and you can tell it, an entrepreneur who's been an entrepreneur all their life and a person who worked in a company and as an entrepreneur. There is a difference. And just by talking to people and the way they act, you can tell the difference.
Yeah, indeed, there are many ways to start up a company, but I love that way. Identify a need and find a solution for it. Or find a problem. If you identify a problem, go for a solution for it. So for me, when you start from a need, a problem, or a customer, which is validating the need or the problem, is a great way to start a company.
Talking about the problem, you just said June, it doesn't look so good. So I think here that's a problem, right? Europe is not doing amazingly as it did maybe 10 years ago or something like that. The US seemed to be doing great. Now it's a bit chaos, let's say, and let's see what happens. But I would be curious with companies like yours where you're selling internationally, where do you see strong growth right now? Like is it India, China, something like that? Or do you see in the market some opportunity geographically that you would say, or maybe a channel also that you would say double down on that one to protect you from going down in Europe, for example?
60% of our business comes out of Europe, so it's a big chunk. And Europe, I don't know. We're looking at recession, looking at stagnated growth for the next few years.
I think companies that are across many markets very early on, they can gain a lot from this. We sat with Google last week and we were looking at Mother's Day that are coming, and Germany came out as the only market where they expect to see growth.
And Germany is the one that's been doing the slowest growth overall.
But Germany also is very, very price sensitive on everything. So it's a very, very hard market. We're lucky that roughly 50% of our market is coming from the US, but I think again in a prism of so many years, the smartest you could do is early on be in a few markets to kind of minimize the risks.
We actually did the reverse exercise this year. We just slashed a bunch of markets, decided there are places we are no longer going to sell because it just doesn't make sense. Like you said, I mean, averages don't work. So if, it's me sending something to Thailand doesn't make sense, so I'm going to stop sending things to Thailand. We've sent to over 132 countries, and now we're just knuckling down on the ones that make sense.
And you can also differentiate the market and the service. Okay, we have a website for the Turkish market. But it's not that we are competing with the local big Turkish players, but we have a niche on international orders where we are the best. So you can spread, and it doesn't mean that you have to copy in each market the entire pillar of the services that you have on the Spanish or the German or the Polish.
But being in one market, well, on an e-commerce, unless you've got something that's really good and just is really niche in one market, I wouldn't be in one market only.
And there's no reason to be in one market. You have translations tools, you have localization tools, super cheap to go and be global.
What's the one question that you want to ask but aren't going to? That's always the best question.
I think that you mentioned that in different months of the year you have different sales and so on, so it's some kind of stationary situation. How do you decide to sell more when people want to buy more, or to sell more when people don't want to buy more to make flat?
We can't. When I started this company, I knew it. There was no way we could ever make it flat. I can't force, it's like you can't force a person to buy a Christmas present in July. They just won't do it. Somebody will. There is always somebody who will buy their Christmas presents in July. But the majority of people will buy their Christmas presents at Christmas time. So if you have a product like ours that is mainly back to school, I can't make people realize, every year it kills me because we've got clients that'll call, my son's starting school tomorrow. It's like, and you didn't know that like 4 months ago? Yeah. So now it's my problem that and it's only your son because the rest of the country isn't starting tomorrow either. So I can't flatten it. I would love to. What we're doing our best is to raise the rest of the year with other products, with other brands, the Camelon brand, for example. But like we said, we have a big problem with digital marketing because we're not relevant until we're relevant. So if Google works on X amount of days trying to figure out if you're relevant, if you're not relevant, by the time they figure out we're relevant, we're no longer relevant. So having a cyclical business is very tricky in an online world where they work on algorithms and ideas that your product is pretty stable across time. No, that happens to you too, doesn't it?
What she says.
So if you're relevant and irrelevant and you can't really change the market.
I think from the pandemic, there's a big growth in e-commerce in general. Shopify is one example, so it's easier to start an e-commerce, easier in some aspect, of course. But do you see a growth in competitors, in complexity? Do you see an opportunity on selling more B2B to the competitors? How does it work and how does it change your day-to-day?
You have to be careful about when you look at what happened in COVID. I remember not related to anything digital, but our notary, I asked him during COVID, I said, how are you doing? He says, we've got a lot of business, doing a lot of wills because a lot of people were dying. And I said, oh, so business is booming. He said, no. Business has just been advanced. All right? These people were going to die one day or another, but they just happened to die sooner than they expected and in a mass. COVID, everybody thought that it was an acceleration of the growth of e-commerce, right? So then you got a lot of companies, especially in the personalized market, a lot of companies that were able to grow really fast during COVID and thought that that was going to be something sustainable across the time because we've crossed a benchmark. We're at a new level of e-commerce, of internet shopping. What happens? People go back to their lives, they start going back outside, they stop spending so much time on the computer, and it goes down. It goes down. And not only did it go down, it crashed and burned a lot of companies that started up during COVID. What we did after about a year and a half is we really, and Mr. KPI, we took out all of our COVID sales from our numbers. We just isolated them. We said, this was a blip on the map. It's never going to happen again. Don't even think about it. So we removed it from our system, and we did all of our growth numbers, taking out COVID. companies, and when I talk to companies about this, and they're like, oh, we're trying to get back to COVID. We're trying to get back to COVID. I'm like, do you not see? Until there's another pandemic, we're not going to get back to COVID. So in that sense, there was a lot of growth in e-commerce but it wasn't a growth that was normal. Like the notary. It wasn't normal for him to do all those wills and testaments at that point in time. So what happened? Yeah, there was an overexpansion of maybe companies that shouldn't have started, companies that started and burned, companies that worked for a couple months and then they left. There was a lot of tools that came out, a lot of more platforms, especially on-demand printing, was the intern in my world. Recently saw an article of a man who had a huge on-demand printing that just exploded. And his last interview that I saw, he said, I want to work on a company, I want to switch, they're pivoting to something so that he would have sustained revenue. Why? Because COVID did this, and now everybody's trying to get back to that, and they can't. So anyway, I can't remember the original question. Do you remember the original question?
Of course.
Okay, so you answer the original question.
There will be more competition, and I think everyone needs to assume that if you have a good service, creating a copycat, 2,000 euros, 3,000 euros, 10,000 euros. Okay, it's becoming cheaper and cheaper to the level that it's a commodity. So instead of getting up in the morning and be worried about this, and instead of, okay, what were our sales today, is how many customers came back today. Retention is the only wall you can build against all this growing competition that will become harder and harder and harder. It's just retention.
What about one-time purchases?
I don't care about one-time purchases.
Not difficult for that if you sell furniture.
I'm sure that there are businesses that are now drowning because they are in the one-time purchases. I think I read the other day that Casa Viva, is there a brand like that? Mm-hmm. That they are in a process of bankruptcy, or it's hard. It's hard. In every service there is retention. I think almost every product. And going back to the question, competition is going to be harder and harder and harder. And I think that retention is the only thing that separates between you and everyone else that can copy you.
The question about branding, it's also related to the retention that we were just talking about. My question. In the beginning, branding is important so it resonates with your customers, and it also will help, this other tool will help you build your retention if your consumer is happy and resonates with your brand. In the beginning, when you need to grow and produce numbers, how much of your time and money, which are limited resources in the beginning, are you actually spending on building and getting a better branding and building a community, as opposed to focusing solely on performance sales? Because you need both, obviously. But in the beginning, I have the impression that people want to focus more on performance.
I can only say from my experience, not enough. And even today, not enough. Because brand is not something that you can see short time ROI. And I think we're still making the mistakes today of not investing enough in branding. It's very hard to measure. So if any, tomorrow morning when I'm back at the office, we'll have a meeting about how to do more in brand, because there's never enough. Brand is very, very strong.
At the same time, you don't know what's doing branding for you. I mean, you can do a lot of things thinking it's doing branding, but your branding might be coming from somewhere else. And then at the end of the day, when you think, now we've got a great brand, and then, you know what, you find out your customers are just price sensitive, and they switch like that.
There is less and less loyalty of customers to services today, to brands. Even Apple are seeing this, or Nike are seeing this. So if any, invest more in brand, in maybe different topics around brand, because you never know. But in hindsight, I think that a percentage from the budget should be branding.
But then you go, just aside, TikTok. Anybody like TikTok? Does anybody know anybody who makes money on TikTok? You know somebody who makes money on, how do they do it?
Well, they post videos and they have a bunch of followers, and then brands come to them and ask to do promotion.
See, they're making money. But the person who's giving their money, those brands, does anybody know any brands that are making money on TikTok?
What we're trying to measure when you cannot measure the brand is look at the Google campaign that is brand, because people go to Google and put your brand in Google and you have to still pay to Google. If you take a market and you do all kind of marketing activities during, let's say, 3 to 6 months, if the paid campaign in brand is actually growing.
This is the tricky part of brands. So I could spend a bunch of money on TikTok, having some influencer spouting my brand, but I don't know if that's really having any impact at all. One is if the Google went up, but you haven't done it via TikTok, you've done it via Google, which is why branding is such a tricky thing. I mean, is it working? Is it not working? And we're spending a lot of money. I could put a bunch of money in TikTok and I could lose all that money. Maybe I would have been better off, putting that money in some little tiny influencers and Instagram, or not. Or maybe I could have just spent that money on Google and had a better return. It's really hard. It's not an easy...
No easy answer.
No easy answer.
Also about retention that we are talking about at the beginning with your first customers. How did you make sure they were coming back to your solution? Did you do typical interviews? Did you offer special prices?
Since my majority of my clients are mothers, the biggest and most important thing is to have a product that had quality. And so if the product was a good product, like I always say, if a mother likes something, they'll tell 200, 500 people. If they hate something, oh my God, the whole entire world will know. So it's really making sure that the product is a good product, it's a reliable product, it's, we always say we want to exceed their expectations. So when somebody says, for the price that I paid, this is amazing, that's how we maintain our retention.
We didn't do much at the beginning, and I regret that. And then for time, we did focus group, we did email with surveys, we did everything that you can think about. But I think the best that works for me as a CEO is to talk to a customer. And especially in B2C, it's very hard because you never meet them. But we have their mobiles, and you call and say, look, I'm the CEO of Floraqueen, and I'd like to have 5 minutes from your time. And even doing 10 calls per week, it's given me a lot of information.
Going back to the KPIs, one of our other KPIs that we have on the walls is our reviews. How many stars do we have? Because that affects everything. That affects everything. Well, we do Trusted Pilot is our preferred one right now.
Okay, we are coming to an end. I have a couple of questions to finish this. One is regarding artificial intelligence. I would like to know whether you are taking advantage of AI or put another way, imagine a competitor is startup or strong competitor is applying AI, and how can they harm you using AI?
You want to go first? Our first venture into artificial intelligence was with Watson. It's one of the EO members at the time. So we actually built, this was pre-COVID, 2018, we built our first customer-facing chat with Watson, IBM's artificial intelligence. So we've been working with artificial intelligence for a while. When LLMs came onto into the scene, we switched from Watson to a full LLM. Anything you want to ask our chat, go for it. It was amazing. It was amazing. Yeah, but it quickly added up. We were going to spend over 50,000 euros in tokens for interaction with less than 6% of our clients. And so the money just didn't work out. So we scaled back that. And then over the year and a half that we've been working on, my important thing right now is we're building in-house AIs on the backside. How can AI help us as a company to be more efficient in what we're doing? So on the not so much customer facing, but internally, what can we do so we can be more efficient in our day-to-day operations on all levels of the company? So my objective is to make sure everybody has a personal assistant that's helping them with their job and to reduce the amount of stupid work that we have to do. On the client-facing side of it, so we scaled back our chat, our AI chat, and it's now a hybrid chat. I'd like to rebuild that when I get to that one. Once we get Wizmo controlled, I'll come to you about the chat. So it's a agent that sells. It doesn't ask the question, that actually sells, which is Alon is going to build it for me.
With AI, we did the obvious in customer service. So almost 70% of tickets are answered by AI, to the point where we see reviews on Google that are thanking Alex for being so patient. But beside that pillar, we're still figuring out what to do. And I think that the smartest is to give the team AI. There is so much out there to make sure that every team member have access to all those tools.
If you will start the same business today with the state of the art in AI and technology, what would you do?
Wow, content, images. I think the image department told them we have 3 tetas worth of images in our system right now. The amount of content, the amount of images you need for an e-commerce is just amazing. And now we obviously do a lot with AI. But if we'd had that at the beginning, oh my God, we would have spent so much time and effort and would have made it so much easier to have been able to do those things with AI. We're also working on videos, because the amount of content that you need for e-commerce, like I said, is just mind-boggling. Between your own web and the social media and the ads and all the creativities. If that had been around when we started, it would have been a different ballgame. What else? Systems, processes. You know, today I was working, all right, so my guy who does lasers is gone sick today. I need to reallocate everybody in the office. So we're trying to build an AI system that said, okay, so-and-so called in sick today, or these 4 people are on vacation. What do I need to do with all the people so that I can relocate them without having to think? There's so many things that is so amazing. I'm just like so glad to be alive at this period of time in history, because I think it's so cool. My ideas, like I've got way more ideas than we're able to implement right now. But what we did is started, you know, attacking one piece at a time of the system of where we're going to.
If I would start today, I would look for team members that are between data, tech, and product. Somewhere in the middle, giving them a lot of AI tools. And probably with, you hear this a lot about those companies with 10 people do 100 million. I think this is clearly what I would do, and this is clearly the future.
Well, we are finishing. You choose the way you want to finish. It could be a one word, a statement, a strong advice, or pitfall to avoid, whatever you want to tell the audience before wrapping up.
You first.
I was just telling them, when I started, I was 40 years old. I didn't have so much gray hair. I had 3 little kids, and I would go to conferences like this and sit in the audience, and I would ask questions. I always was amazed that there weren't very many women. Thank you, women, for coming today, because it's always the same. It hasn't changed. Hasn't changed. But I was at one, and I remember it was an e-show, back when e-show you could still see some big names. and it was the founder of Prevalia. He said that if there's one thing you take away from this, he said, think big, because life's too short to think small. And it stuck in my head, and that like was one of the basis of everything we did from the beginning.
I want to say thank you, because I've tried to avoid coming here twice, and you didn't buy the excuses. Well, once you did, and then you didn't. I actually want to say thank you for Eric, and thank you guys, because by answering on brand, for example, it's okay. I need to go back tomorrow and see what more I can do on brand. We are far from running perfect companies, very, very far from running perfect companies. So the first message is again, thank you for doing all those questions. And the second is that I'm sticking around, and I will be willing and happy to meet some of you, and even take it further. You know, if you want to keep in contact, just drop me a message on LinkedIn or whatever, and I'll be happy to help on one-on-one.
Thank you very much.